Hi, for today's session, we're going to walk through how to import custom attribute contents from Excel directly into the catalog. So the current issue is we're trying to solve is that we have or work with a lot of companies that have Excel templates and they have a specific format. We don't want to change that format. We want to just be able to use that to upload content into the catalog. What we have at our disposal today is a facility where we can do an export and import again as a bulk export. But it's a specific format and it means you can only do it at the resource level. You can't just pick a single table or a set of objects. So ideally we want to be able to read these Excel file or files directly and update the catalog content directly, and that's what we're going to do using the catalog REST API. So here's an example dataset. It has a dataset catalog worksheet, and part of that is two columns. There's a column A and a column C. So for column A, rows 2 to n, we've got a list of names, attribute names. For column C, the third column, we have some values. So the dataset name in this case is portfolio reference history, and we've got things like a load frequency and a dataset category with historical reference and a description here. So what we're going to do is use this to do a lookup of the object in the catalog. And one assumption we're going to make is that this name, portfolio reference history, we are going to replace any spaces with underscores because this is an Oracle scan we're trying to connect it to, and it doesn't have any spaces in the name. So we're trying to find an exact reference there. So the process that we're going to go through, or this script is going through, is that first thing it's going to do is a connect to the catalog. And we do this because we need to get a list of all the attributes or custom attributes that are added to the model of the catalog to just get them in memory to know which ones we have to use and which ones we don't have. We don't just want to blindly think that they're all there because that could cause some problems. Then we'll do a lookup for each file in a specific folder. The default is current, and any file with an XLSX extension, we're going to read that file, specifically read the catalog, dataset catalog worksheet, and then extract all the properties from columns A and C. So we just store them in a memory, a dictionary, so we have the attribute name and its content, and we can use that to load the catalog. Once we do that, we're going to then do a lookup for the object to find that object in the catalog. And here's an example of the query. We're using the objects API method or call, and we're passing in the query with two parameters. We're looking for the class type is a relational table, and the name is portfolio reference history for this exact example. Now, if we find one object, we're going to update it. If we don't find one, so that means 0 or more than 1, it's an error, and we'll just print that out to the screen. Obviously, if we can't find anything, we can't do that. If there's more than one table with the same name, then we have to be more specific in how we do filtering. We can change the lookup condition to do that. So once we find one object, we're going to look at each attribute that's in the Excel spreadsheet, confirm that it exists in the catalog, and if it does exist, then if the value is empty, which means it doesn't have a value in the catalog yet, we're going to get ready and prepare that new attribute to be imported or uploaded. If it does already exist, we'll compare the incoming value to what's already there, and only if it's different will we replace the content. And finally, after all those attributes have been iterated through, we store a flag to see if the update is actually needed or not, because we don't want to update if we don't have to. And finally, once that happens, we'll actually use the put method to put that object back into the catalog. So to do this, you download this Python script, import dataset attributes from Excel. Open the script and look at the settings start here and end here, where you just change the value for where your catalog server is, what the Excel folder is. We're defaulting it to dot, which is the current folder, and what your user ID, UID is as well. The password you can either type in there, or if you set it to prompt, it will prompt you for that value. Just one other note, if you are using SSL certificates, then you put the PEM file in there that you use to connect, so you don't get any SSL kind of connection warning messages. So here's our example again. This is for portfolio reference history, and in my catalog, I've got 3 attributes. I've got the category, the description, and I think the access policy. And if you add more attributes, that becomes available as well. It's a flexible process. So here's my before image. I've got those 3 attributes I just mentioned. The dataset description is a rich text, so it appears in the main body. The dataset access policy and category are just regular text attributes. They appear here in the custom attributes section. So this is the before image. After we run the script, then we get these values: FMR user only for the access policy, historical reference for the category, and then the description. So that shows that the end result of the process actually working. So to download the files, we've got a link here that we can download. I'm just going to copy that and show how that runs. And you just start it up using Python and then the script name after editing. So we'll take a quick pause there and we'll actually show a live demonstration now. So let's go to our console. So I have actually, firstly, let's look at my catalog. I've got the same object here, portfolio reference history. It has nothing set in any of these attributes. So there's nothing in the access policy, the category, or the description there. And if we go to our model, I've got three attributes: dataset access policy, dataset category, dataset description. And the only real thing is that we have to know is that the names of these attributes must match the names of these attributes here. Otherwise, we have no way of knowing which attribute to populate. So the script will help to do the lookup for all of those. And in this case, it will only process three of those, more than three fields there. If we go and add a new attribute, it will then get imported as well. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to load up and open my terminal session here. This is a Linux terminal. I'll do the same on Windows in a moment. The process is the same for both. So what I'm going to do is execute that wget to pull down the example. And let's have a look at what it just did. It's created this zip file here. So let's just unzip that. If I could type. Okay, so it's got three files. It's got our example spreadsheet, it's got a utility class or a set of methods, and the script that we want to actually work on. So let's have a look at that script just quickly. So there is a section here for the settings start here. All you need to do is change the location of your catalog, either HTTP or HTTPS, and then the URL and the port number, plus the user ID, and we're going to prompt for the password. And as I mentioned, if you have a SSL certificate, you can just uncomment this and put in it's default to the local, the same working folder that we're running from. You just have a link to your PEM file there. So let's run it and see what happens. So we just call this Python and then import. So the first thing is we have a disclaimer. The reason for putting in here is that this is not a supported product or anything officially delivered by Informatica. So if you have problems, don't call our support team. It does work and you can use it for learning, but just use it as is, but it is not a supported thing. So you have to agree, either yes or not yes. And I'm going to say yes. Second thing is it's telling me, just printing back onto the screen, that here is my catalog URL and here's my user ID. It's prompting me for the password because I wanted to do that rather than store the password in the file. So I'll just enter that. And the process is now done. And we'll walk through the result of this in just a moment, but let's go back to our catalog, browser UI here, and refresh. So we've got values. We've got our access policy, we've got our category, and we've got our description. So it all works. So what did it do? Just quickly, you can obviously run this script on your own and have a look through the code that does this. But step one is it's listing all the custom attributes, and it stores them here with a list of all the names, like the account ID, the description, the frequency, and so on. The second step is it's reading the Excel file folder, and it's found this one file, and just got one. If there's multiple, it would read them. And it's opening the worksheet and it's looking at the different attributes like dataset catalog, reference history. And for each of those, it's trying to figure out if the things actually, well, firstly, it stores those in memory. Sorry, it's storing the fact that here's a reference history and I don't think we're printing out the values here. Oh, the value is, that's the value, and this is the dataset name. We've got the version number here, which is the value of 1, and so on. This is just reading the Excel into memory. The next step is we are going to find the catalog object, and it's looking for portfolio reference history, and here's that collection of attributes, what the Excel reading process just did. It's just stored in a dictionary in Python. And the other thing is the technical name, we are just replacing the actual name with any underscores for any spaces, and we're executing this search. And this search here, I could actually if I copy that, I can go back to my catalog here and execute exactly the same search, and it's giving me exactly one object, and I can open that object. So that's good. If it did more, I would put a filter in for maybe the resource name or something else. So because we found an item, we're saying here, we found it, here's the ID. We are going to check every attribute, like the petition, the access policy, every one of those we're going to see, does it exist? And if it doesn't, it says use the LDM admin UI to create it. So if you create that attribute, we'll be able to write values to it. For the other ones, like a dataset access policy, which did exist because it's right down here, access policy, we're saying this is a new value, and here's the JSON that we put together to say here's how we put that value back into the catalog. These little U's here are because I'm using Python 2.7 and it doesn't do very well with Unicode, but don't worry about that too much. You can look at the code of how that goes together. The other one here is dataset category. It's a new attribute value, and the last one is the description. All the rest of them do not exist in my catalog, so they will not be updated. The last thing here, it's going to say, it says here it's ready to update the item, and here's the URL it's using. So that's a put. And we basically, here we see the results set of 200, which means the update was found or made. So let's do one more thing here really quickly. I'm going to edit a value. I'm just going to say, let's just take some string out of here and change a value. And maybe I'll just pull this one out altogether. And so someone's made an update to the catalog. Okay, so we should just make sure, I'm going to refresh to make sure that did get updated. Yep, that looks good. Let's run the process again. And we'll agree to the terms, and we'll put our password in. And it's telling me here that, for instance, the values match, no update needed. That's for the description attribute. The other one here, the dataset category, it's a new attribute. And I think the other one was, it should have gone and made the update for that as well. Let's just go and have a look. It should have been the access policy. Let's have a look at that here. Access policy, it says it's the existing attribute with the value here, which is on the screen here, does not match what's coming in from the spreadsheet. So it's false, which means it does not match, and it says it's going to replace that. So it's, again, we've got a 200 return code. It's complete. If I go and edit again, it's set back to normal. So I guess the more you edit this, if someone edits it and you rerun the process, it will then override those edits. So I think that's it. It shows that the process works. You can go ahead and review the code and see exactly what that does over time, and you should be able to then process more of those files of the same example. So we went through the download. We actually ran the process a couple of times and showed that it does actually work. There's a few notes here. You do need these packages, requests and OpenPY Excel. Here's some instructions on how to get those. I prefer, if I'm using Python, to create a virtual environment so we don't have to use sudo to install those things and perhaps get in the way of some other processes running on the machine. So you can do some Google searches on how to do that, but that's my preferred way. Other notes is that this process, we're having to hard code the settings for the catalog URL and the user ID. Any changes to that, like parameterizing it and passing it in on the command line, that's way out of scope. Feel free to go and do that if you want. As I already mentioned, only the attributes that are created in the catalog are written. Others are completely skipped, but it does print to the screen to say they don't exist. So there's no formatting either. So for instance, if there are new lines in the description, we're not doing anything with that. We're not looking at any date formats and no data type enforcement, like if the value is really an integer, are we checking that it is or isn't? It's just writing whatever it can write. We're making no attempt to do that because this really is just an example. Go ahead and add that functionality if you want. It's all possible. It's completely out of scope though. And the last thing is that the error checking is minimal. So we've got enough error checking to see if something goes wrong, it will print a message. So one of them here, if you've got the wrong password or ID, it'll give you an authentication failed message. Other times it may just give you more of an equivalent of a stack trace, but that should be fairly other times it may give you something of the equivalent of a stack trace, but that should be fairly easy to troubleshoot. It's a pretty simple process. It doesn't take up a lot of time and effort to review exactly what's there. So with that, I think we're just about done.